What happens when a Hollywood icon of brutal efficiency faces a martial arts legend of technical perfection? This isn't a movie. This is the unscripted moment that redefined respect in front of thousands. You have to see it. The air inside London's O2 Arena crackled with electric anticipation. It wasn't a prize fight or a rock concert. It was a gala celebrating the union of action cinema and martial arts, a night where legends of the screen and the dojo shared the same space. Spotlights swept across the velvet seats, catching the glitter of evening wear and the excited faces of thousands. On the central stage, a man moved with the grace of a panther and the power of a locomotive. Michael Jai White, at 57, was a living monument to martial discipline. Dressed in a sharp, tailored suit that couldn't conceal the coiled power in his shoulders and chest, he commanded the stage. As a master holding black belts in 7 distinct disciplines, his presence was a lesson in controlled force. After a dazzling demonstration of kata that drew thunderous applause, he took the microphone. "Thank you, London," his voice boomed, warm and charismatic. He spoke of his love for the art, for the dedication it takes. Then, his tone shifted, a playful yet serious glint in his eye. "We live in an amazing time for action. We can create magic with cameras and editing." He paused, letting the statement hang in the air. "But we must never forget what is real." His gaze swept the VIP section, landing on one man. "And speaking of real, we have an icon with us tonight." The spotlights followed his gesture, converging on a figure seated with quiet intensity. Jason Statham. At 55, he wore a tailored dark jacket and a simple Henley, his famous stoic expression unreadable. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Jason," Michael continued, his voice resonating with respect. "You've built a career on a brand of brutal efficiency that fans, myself included, absolutely love. But I have to ask, as one artist to another," he leaned forward, "in a world without camera cuts and stunt doubles, how does that raw, cinematic efficiency hold up against the time-honored principles of traditional martial arts?" A hush fell over the arena. This wasn't a cheap shot. It was a legitimate, high-level question posed by one master to another. It was a philosophical challenge. The crowd held its breath, a mixture of shock and exhilaration rippling through them. Statham didn't smile. He didn't flinch. For a long moment, he remained perfectly still. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion that seemed to draw all the energy in the room toward him, he stood up. He didn't speak. He simply started walking toward the stage, his every step measured and certain. The challenge had been accepted. The atmosphere on the stage was thick enough to cut with a knife. Statham shrugged off his jacket, handing it to a stagehand without looking. He now stood in just his Henley and trousers, his physique less about sculpted mass and more about dense, functional power. He faced Michael Jai White, and the two men locked eyes. There was no referee, no bell, just two apex predators assessing one another. Michael was the first to move. He settled into a classic karate stance, a picture of textbook perfection. His movements were broad, powerful, and beautiful to behold. He launched a probing front kick, fast and sharp, aimed to test Statham's reaction. Statham didn't retreat. He didn't even block in the conventional sense. He made a minuscule adjustment with his lead foot and shifted his torso a single inch to the side. The kick, thrown with enough force to splinter a board, sliced through empty air, missing by a hair's breadth. Michael flowed seamlessly into his next attack, a lightning-fast jab-cross combination, each punch snapping at the end of its extension. Again, Statham's response was unervingly minimal. A slight dip of the head, a subtle rotation of the shoulder. The punches found nothing but the ghost of their target. It was like watching a hurricane trying to hit a single, unmoving granite cliff. The crowd watched in baffled silence. They had come expecting a brawl or a flashy spar. They were witnessing something else entirely, a visual debate between two opposing combat philosophies. Michael's art was one of expression and overwhelming force, the beauty of power. Statham's was one of pure, undiluted economy, the brutality of efficiency. Frustration flickered across Michael's face. He was throwing perfect techniques, yet they were being rendered useless with almost insulting ease. He circled Statham, his footwork flawless, and unleashed a spinning hook kick, a move of incredible athleticism and power. It was the kind of technique that won championships and headline highlight reels. Statham didn't back away. He moved into the kick's path, closing the distance. Just as Michael's leg began its devastating arc, Statham's hand shot out. Not to block, but to gently cup the supporting ankle. It was a tiny, disruptive touch that sent a ripple of instability through Michael's entire frame. The kick lost all its power, wobbling in the air before being pulled back. The philosophical debate was over. A lesson was beginning. Michael Jai White landed back in his stance, his composure momentarily fractured. He stared at Statham, not with anger, but with a dawning, unsettling realization. He hadn't been blocked or overpowered. His attacks were being systematically dismantled. The very principles of timing, distance, and power that he had mastered were being turned against him by a man who seemed to be doing almost nothing at all. He took a deep breath, his competitive spirits surging. The time for testing was over. He exploded forward, unleashing a furious combination designed not to test, but to overwhelm. It was a torrent of strikes, hooks, uppercuts, knees, each flowing into the next, a display of the awesome offensive power that made him a legend. He was determined to break through this wall of unnerving calm. He drove a powerful straight right, a piston of a punch aimed squarely at Statham's chest. He put his weight, his technique, his entire will behind it. This time, Statham didn't evade. As the punch traveled the final few inches, he moved. He didn't step back. He pivoted on his lead foot, his body rotating slightly offline. His left hand came up, not in a hard block, but with an open palm. He didn't stop the punch. He met it, redirected it. With a motion that was more like a surgeon's touch than a fighter's blow, Statham's palm made contact with the outside of Michael's wrist. He absorbed none of the force. Instead, he guided it, turning Michael's own tremendous forward momentum into a rotational force. The effect was instantaneous and shocking. Michael felt his own power pulling him off balance, his body twisting uncontrollably past Statham. He stumbled, his feet tangling as he fought to stay upright. The punch that was meant to be a knockout blow had resulted in his own stance being utterly compromised. He caught himself after 2 clumsy steps, turning to face Statham again. The arena was dead silent. A collective gasp had been sucked out of the air. Michael Jai White, a master of balance and power, had been thrown off kilter without being struck. He looked at Statham, whose expression hadn't changed, whose feet hadn't moved more than 6 inches. In that moment, Michael understood. He wasn't fighting an actor. He was facing a different kind of martial science, one built on a foundation of physics and anatomical reality that was as profound as it was terrifyingly efficient. The crack in his perception had shattered into a chasm. The energy on the stage had irrevocably shifted. The contest was over. An education was in session. Michael Jai White stood straight, his chest rising and falling as he recalibrated everything he thought he knew about this confrontation. The fire of the challenger in his eyes had been replaced by the intense, burning curiosity of the student. He looked at his own hands, then back at Statham. He saw not a rival, but a peer who possessed a key to a room he hadn't even known existed. The public challenge, the questions of cinematic versus real-world skill, it all seemed trivial now. He was in the presence of a different kind of mastery, and his own deep-seated respect for the martial arts rose to the surface, eclipsing his pride. Slowly, deliberately, Michael relaxed his fighting stance. He brought his feet together. In the profound silence of the O2 arena, he raised his hands. He pressed his open right palm against his closed left fist in a formal, traditional bow. It was a gesture of immense significance. In the world of martial arts, it is a symbol of supreme respect, an acknowledgement from one practitioner to another that they are in the presence of true skill. It was an apology, a concession, and a mark of honor all in one silent motion. The crowd, which had been buzzing with confusion, seemed to understand the gravity of the moment instantly. A wave of murmurs washed through the seats, not of excitement, but of awe. They were no longer watching a fight. They were witnessing a transfer of respect between two titans. Phones were still raised, but they were no longer just recording a spectacle. They were documenting a piece of history. Statham received the gesture with a quiet nod. The hard, impenetrable look in his eyes softened, replaced by an acknowledgement of his own. He had been challenged, and he had answered. Now, respect was being offered, and he accepted it. This silent exchange was more powerful than any punch thrown. It was a testament to the true spirit of martial arts, the endless pursuit of knowledge and the humility to recognize it in another, even in a supposed rival. Michael held the bow for a long moment before straightening up. His expression was clear. The challenge was withdrawn. A request for knowledge had been made. In response to Michael's profound gesture of respect, Jason Statham did something he hadn't done all night. He moved. He shifted his weight, sinking slightly, and for the first time, adopted a formal fighting stance. It was not a flashy movie posture. It was a compact, brutally efficient framework of a man ready for anything. His hands were held in unique guard, his body coiled. The message was clear. Now that you are ready to see, I am ready to show you. The demonstration that followed was one for the ages. It was no longer a fight, but a physical dialogue. Michael, now moving with inquisitive precision, would ask a question with an attack. He'd launch a clean, technical kick. Statham would answer by showing him exactly how to neutralize it, not by blocking, but by intercepting the limb at its weakest point, using leverage to nullify the threat before it could even form. Michael threw a crisp three-punch combination. Statham flowed with it, his hands parrying and redirecting the energy in a fluid, continuous motion, his feet making tiny, precise adjustments. He made Michael's formidable offense look like a river flowing harmlessly around a stone. The audience was captivated, watching this intricate dance of force and principle. They were learning just as Michael was. The exchange grew closer, moving from kicking range to punching range, and finally to the close-quarters combat that was Statham's domain. Here, his art form revealed its true genius. Michael attempted to clinch, to use his wrestling and jiu-jitsu background. Statham met him inside. What followed was a masterclass in biomechanics. There were no grunts, no sounds of heavy impact. It was a silent, flowing sequence of control. Statham's hands moved like water, transitioning from a wrist lock to an elbow hyperextension, never holding, always moving, using Michael's own resistance to power the next transition. He wasn't using strength. He was manipulating structure. The final sequence was breathtaking in its simplicity. As Michael tried to regain his posture, Statham secured a subtle underhook, pivoted, and used his hip as a fulcrum. It wasn't a throw. It was an escort. He guided Michael's center of gravity past the point of no return. Michael Jai White, a powerhouse of an athlete, was brought to the mat with the gentle certainty of a setting sun. He landed softly on his back, Statham holding a controlling position for a single definitive second before releasing him and stepping back. It was over. A complete and total submission had been achieved without a single damaging strike being thrown. It was the ultimate expression of Statham's philosophy. Absolute control, maximum efficiency, zero waste. Lying on a canvas, Michael Jai White didn't move for a moment. He stared up at the bright arena lights, the roar of the crowd a distant hum. There was no anger on his face, no shame. There was only the quiet, profound clarity of a man who had just had his entire world expanded. He broke into a slow smile, then let out a short, appreciative laugh, and shook his head. He sat up, then rose to his feet. The two men stood in the center of the stage as the O2 arena erupted in a standing ovation. It wasn't the wild cheering of a knockout, but a sustained, rolling thunder of deep and genuine respect for both masters. Later that night, away from the cameras, Michael found Statham in a quiet corridor. "Jason," he said, his voice stripped of all bravado. Statham simply nodded. I've spent a lifetime mastering 7 different languages of combat, Michael said, looking him in the eye. Tonight, you spoke when I've never heard. I pursued power and technique. You showed me the power of pure structure and timing. They're just different tools for the same job, Statham replied, his voice a low gravel. I'd like to learn more about your tools, Michael said, the request sincere. Statham gave a rare, thin smile. Learning never ends. A week later, a video appeared on Michael Jai White's official social media channels. The clip was simple. Him, alone in a dojo, barefoot. There were no explosive kicks or flashy combinations. He was practicing a single, simple, repetitive movement, a short, efficient step and pivot, the very foundation of the style that had dismantled him. His millions of followers watched in fascination. The caption was short and humble. Day 1. Learning never ends. My respect to my friend, Jason. What began as a challenge had transformed into a legendary exchange, reminding everyone that true mastery isn't about being unbeatable. It's about being open to learning. If this story resonated with you, show your respect in the comments. Let us know what you learned. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that go beyond the script.